I'm going to say something that took me half a century to admit out loud. For 50 years, I slept next to a woman whose breathing I could recognize in a crowded room, whose footsteps I could identify in the dark, whose handwriting I could spot on an envelope without seeing the name. And yet, somewhere along the way, she became a stranger. Not all at once, not dramatically, no slammed doors, no affairs, no screaming matches that make for good stories at dinner parties. Just distance, quiet. A slow erosion so subtle I didn't notice it until one night I turned toward her in bed and realized I didn't know who she was anymore. And the darker truth? I don't think she knew who I was either. If you're still listening, it's probably because a part of you recognizes that feeling, that quiet panic that comes not from chaos, but from routine, from years that blur together, from conversations that shrink to logistics. If that's you, stay with me, because this isn't a story about blame. It's a confession about time, identity, and the price we pay for surviving instead of living. The night I noticed. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday that feels identical to every other Tuesday that came before it. The dishes were done, the television murmured in the background, the house smelled faintly of detergent and old wood. We went to bed at the same time we always did. She turned off the lamp. I rolled onto my side, and in that moment, lying inches from someone I had shared my entire adult life with, I felt unbearably alone. I listened to her breathing, steady, predictable, the same rhythm I'd fallen asleep to for decades. But something was missing, not love, not respect, something more unsettling, curiosity. I realized I no longer wondered what she was thinking. I no longer felt the urge to ask. And worse, I no longer felt the need to be known. That's when it hit me. This wasn't intimacy. This was cohabitation with a memory. We didn't drift apart. We aged apart. People imagine marriages fall apart in explosions. They don't. They decay in silence. We grew older side by side, but not together. We became efficient, functional, good at managing a household, good at raising children, good at surviving illnesses, financial scares, sleepless nights. But somewhere in that competence, something fragile died. We stopped telling each other what scared us, what excited us, what we secretly mourned. Not because we didn't care, but because we were tired. Tired from work, tired from responsibility, tired from carrying the unspoken weight of expectations. So we conserved energy. We talked about weather, schedules, what needed fixing, and slowly, unknowingly, we buried ourselves alive under practicality. The myth that trapped us. There's a lie our generation swallowed whole, that stability is love, that loyalty is silence, that enduring is the same as connecting. We were taught that if you didn't leave, you were succeeding. No one taught us how to stay awake inside a life. We measured our marriage by how long it lasted, not how deeply it breathed. And so when the passion faded, when the mystery disappeared, we told ourselves this was normal. This is what long marriages look like, we said. And maybe it is. But normal doesn't mean healthy, and longevity doesn't mean intimacy. The stranger beside me. When did she become a stranger? It wasn't the wrinkles, or the gray hair, or the slower steps. It was the silence where curiosity used to live. I didn't know what she regretted most. She didn't know what kept me awake at night. I didn't know what dreams she had quietly buried to be practical. She didn't know how often I fantasized about disappearing, not dying, just resting from being needed. We were polite roommates with a shared history. And the darkest part? Neither of us knew how to start again. Because after 50 years, admitting distance feels like betrayal. The fear. No one talks about. There's a special kind of terror that comes with aging. It's not death. It's the fear that your life hardened into something unchangeable, that it's too late to ask new questions, too late to want something different, too late to confess what you've been carrying alone. So instead, we accept numbness as peace. We tell ourselves, at least there's no drama. But peace without connection is just quiet despair. I wasn't innocent. Here's the part I avoided for years. I didn't lose her. I abandoned myself. I stopped being curious. I stopped sharing the parts of me that felt inconvenient. I stopped risking honesty because it felt safer to be predictable. I became reliable and invisible. So did she. We both made the same mistake from opposite sides of the bed. The moment of reckoning. One morning, I woke before sunrise. The house was silent. I made coffee and sat alone at the kitchen table. And for the first time in decades, I asked myself a question I had avoided. If this is how the rest of my life feels, am I okay with that? The answer terrified me, because the answer was no. Not angry, no. Not dramatic, no. Just a quiet, exhausted refusal. What I did next changed. Everything I didn't demand change. I didn't accuse. I didn't relive old arguments. I asked one question, a simple one. Do you ever feel like we stopped knowing each other? She didn't answer right away. She stared at her hands, and then she cried, not loud, not messy, just tears of relief, because someone finally said it. The truth we both feared. She admitted something that shattered me. She had felt invisible for years, not unloved, unseen. And I realized that's exactly how I felt too. We weren't enemies. We were two people waiting for permission to speak. Why this matters to you. If you're listening to this and thinking, this sounds familiar, then this isn't about marriage. It's about time, about the quiet deals we make with life. I'll endure now. I'll feel later. I'll be practical now. I'll be honest later. I'll stay quiet now. I'll matter later. Later isn't guaranteed, and numbness is not the reward for loyalty. You are not broken. If you've drifted from someone you love, or from yourself, it doesn't mean you failed. It means you survived. But survival is only the first chapter. The rest requires courage. The question that remains. Here's the question I leave you with. Who are you sleeping next to? And more importantly, who are you now? If this spoke to you, let me know in the comments, not with explanations, just with honesty. And if you're still searching for yourself inside a life that looks successful from the outside, subscribe. You're not alone, and it's not too late to wake up. Where I left off, I had just admitted something dangerous. That survival is not the same as living. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. The long years we don't name. There's a stretch of life no one prepares you for. It's not youth. It's not old age. It's that long middle corridor where nothing is wrong, but nothing is fully alive either. You're functional, respected, dependable, and deeply, privately tired. This is where we lived for decades. We paid the bills, we attended weddings, we buried parents, we smiled for photos we never framed. And every year, something subtle slipped away. Not love, attention. We stopped noticing each other's inner weather. I didn't see the way her laughter thinned. She didn't see how my patience hardened into indifference. Not cruelty, not neglect. Just emotional economy. We spent ourselves everywhere else. The body knows before the mind does. Here's something no one tells you. Your body starts grieving before you do. I developed a tightness in my chest I couldn't explain. She stopped sleeping through the night. Doctors called it stress, aging, normal. But I think our bodies were reacting to something unnamed, to lives that looked complete on paper but felt unfinished on the inside. We were aging without evolving, and the body resists stagnation. The silence that becomes permanent silence changes shape over time. At first, it's peaceful, then it becomes convenient, then it becomes dangerous. Because once silence hardens, speaking feels like disruption. So we avoided difficult truths, not to protect each other, but to protect the structure of our life, the house, the routines, the image. We became caretakers of a shared illusion. The question that nearly ended us. After that morning conversation, After the tears, there was a long pause in our marriage. Not weeks, months, because awareness destabilizes everything. We had to face something terrifying. What if we didn't know how to love each other anymore? What if the people we had become weren't compatible? This is the question many couples avoid, not because they don't care, but because the answer might require courage they no longer feel capable of. Nostalgia is a dangerous drug. We tried remembering our early years, the laughter, the hunger, the reckless closeness, but nostalgia can become a trap. You start chasing ghosts instead of listening to the present. We weren't those people anymore, and pretending we could be was another form of dishonesty. So we stopped asking, "How do we get back?" and started asking something harder. Who are we now? The dark truth about long love. Here's the truth. No anniversary speech includes, long love doesn't survive on affection. It survives on renegotiation. You have to re-meet each other, again and again and again. Most people don't fail at love. They stop updating it. When I finally spoke plainly, one night, lying in the same bed where I once felt alone, I said something I had never said before. I'm scared I disappeared inside this life, not blaming her, not asking her to fix it, just telling the truth. She didn't respond immediately. Then she said something that still echoes in me. I thought it was just me. That sentence changed everything, because loneliness shared becomes connection. We didn't reignite passion. We reclaimed presence. This isn't a movie. There was no sudden romance, no dramatic transformation. What returned was smaller, slower, more honest. We started sitting together without distractions, asking questions without rushing answers. What do you regret? What do you still want? What scares you now? Some answers were uncomfortable, but discomfort is a sign of life. The stranger began to fade. She didn't become who she used to be. She became who she was becoming, and so did I. The stranger beside me didn't vanish overnight, but little by little curiosity returned, and curiosity is the beginning of intimacy. What if nothing changed? Here's the part I need to say clearly. Not every story ends in renewal. Some people wake up and realize awakening itself is the victory. Some marriages remain quiet, some remain distant. Some remain intact but transformed internally. The tragedy isn't staying. The tragedy is sleeping through your own life. This is bigger than marriage. If you're listening and you're alone, or divorced, or widowed, this still applies. You can sleep next to a stranger inside yourself. You can build a life so full of obligation that there's no room left for truth. This is about presence, about choosing consciousness over comfort. The lie of too late. At our age, too late becomes the most dangerous phrase. Too late to change. Too late to speak. Too late to want more. That lie keeps millions emotionally buried. But time doesn't demand perfection, only honesty. What I know now. Love isn't maintained by staying. It's maintained by showing up awake, again and again, even when it's awkward, even when it's late, even when you're tired, especially then. The final question, so I'll ask you, gently, the same question that saved me. Where have you gone silent in your own life? And what truth have you been waiting to speak because you feared it would change everything? It might, but silence already has. If this spoke to you, if this story felt uncomfortably familiar, you're not broken. You're human. Leave a comment, not explaining, just acknowledging. Subscribe if you're ready to live awake instead of just lasting. We're not here to endure time. We're here to inhabit it. And even now, it's not too late to come back to yourself.